Hello everybody, Glass Half Dead here, and today we have quite possibly one of the biggest rules drops to date. Purely because we are going to see some actual data cards from other factions, and if you've watched some of my other videos, seeing how other factions and their stats are tells us a lot about the game, and actually there's quite a bit here today that I think does tell us exactly that. I've talked a lot about range and how the range of certain numbers will define like the accuracy of interpretations of the characters and models in lore, kind of, and like in game mechanics. And finally we get to see some of that, and I'm actually a little bit shocked by some of it, I'm not gonna lie. Let's have ourselves a little read. I'm going to assume that you have read the article at this point. I think by the time my video releases, everybody's probably read it. If you haven't, it just says a bunch of wordy stuff, but it's really all about the actual data cards. So let's dive into it. But first, obviously, if you are a subscriber to my channel, I would like to give you a big double hello. Wow, what a wholesome noise that was. If you would like yourself a double pleasantry in the next video, subscribe now and that could be all yours, as it is a subscriber only benefit. Also, a quick note to everybody that is in the UK, preferably London, but is willing to travel on September the 26th and I think 27th or the 25th, whatever. There's going to be at London Grand Tournament, there's going to be a Kill Team tournament. I'm hosting it. It was of course originally going to be Kill Team 18. But now, because of this, and we know it's going to arrive on time, it's going to be a Kill Team 21, Kill Team Octarius thing. Let's dive into it. If you want to go to that LGT, there's going to be a link in the top comment. Consider it. There are still plenty of tickets left, but that's about to change. Anyway, let's talk about the Compendium. So one of the big questions a lot of people have been asking, presumably because they haven't been watching my videos, is what happens to all of the other factions? Is Kill Team Octarius only going to be the Kriegsmen and the Commandos upon release? No. And finally, we're getting the article that tells us that officially. They did mention it in the first Kill Team reveal stream that they did, but the Kill Team core box is going to release along with the Kill Team Compendium. The Compendium, as it says if you've read this article, is every other faction that we'll be able to play in Kill Team, at least upon release. Maybe they will add other factions later, who knows. This is the bad boy right here. Very cool looking, I guess. It's what you'd expect. Let's keep going. Okay, just to get yourself hyped, in case you haven't read the article, although I do suggest that you go and do that yourself, obviously, we're going to see 3 data cards. One is the Poxwalker, then it's the Dire Avenger, Warrior, don't know what that means, and Custodian Guard, Warrior. We're going to have a quick look over all of them, but first, let's look at the Poxwalker. Let's see what stands out to us as people that are reading this. So first off, it's a movement 2 circle. That's about right. Fair enough. They're slower than everything else, but they're not 1 circle. So I can think we would safely say that if a Poxwalker is 2 circle, nothing in the game will be less than 2 circle. Action point limits 2, so they're still making as many actions as a guardsman. GA 2, now we haven't actually had GA properly explained to us yet, but at this point we're kind of assuming that GA just means when you choose to activate this model, you can activate the GA number of that data card. So if you just have a regular Poxwalker, when you do one of your activations, you can activate 2 of them. Now defense is 3. This is going to be very relevant. The defense 3, super relevant throughout this entire article. Save is 6 up, 7 wounds. So same wounds as a regular guardsman. I wouldn't have been shocked if it was defense 2, but as we keep going, we'll see why this is so shocking. We should of course look at the improvised weapon. This is it. So obviously it doesn't have a ranged weapon. It does have a close combat. Now it's attacks 4, hitting on 4s, damage 2, 3. So interestingly, our boy here is actually more like lethal than a guardsman with a bayonet who just have attack 3. The bayonet is attack 3, hitting on 4s, damage 2, 3. So the Poxwalker, more dangerous than a guardsman. And then I'm just going to read the abilities to you here. Mindless. Each time this operative would perform a mission action or the pickup action, we'll mention that in a moment, you must subtract 1 additional AP to do so. This operative cannot be equipped with equipment. In narrative play, it cannot gain or lose experience and automatically passes casualty tests. Disgustingly resilient, 5 up, feel no pain. We all know what that is. Interesting. I would say a quick note on disgustingly resilient. Disgustingly resilient can be really good if you're thinking about current kill team. Like sometimes that DR is really strong. But don't forget, now you have 7 wounds instead of 1. Disgusting Resilient is actually like really, it's got a huge buff because you get to roll it 7 times instead of 1 time. Then we go to Mindless. This tells us a little bit. First off, we're going to have a pickup action. One could assume, therefore, that possibly one of the objectives would be, you know, a capture and hold, a capture the flag sort of thing, where you run out, or capture the relic, I think it's called. You run out, you pick something up, you bring it back. You know, just gives us that. So something to keep in mind. And then there's a little bit at the end there about narrative things, which I don't think anything there actually tells us something particularly crazy, but it's like, okay, there's a campaign and it has experience and casualty tests. That's quite standard for GW games, so nothing crazy there. I suppose the other thing is this operative cannot be equipped with equipment. We don't quite know what that means yet. Basically, you can never give them a weapon. That's all that's saying. And do note that in the bottom right-hand corner, they can't be made a specialist of any sort, but we still don't fully know what these specialism things mean. Cool. Now we get to a Dire Avenger Warrior. Firstly, we don't know why there's brackets Warrior. I'm guessing, okay, this is my hypothesis, the warrior bit there is actually the specialism. Because, so if you think of the Krieg or the Commandos, they all have unique data sheets that show a unique model that is clearly built to be that specialism. You know, whether it's the Breacher Boy, or the demo, or the comms, or the sniper, those all have unique models because those boxes were designed for Kill Team. But now we're seeing how a data card might appear in a generic format. So Dire Avenger Warrior, presumably there might also be Dire Avenger Breacher or Dire Avenger Bruiser, right? So this is pure speculation, but I'm assuming the brackets is how we are denoting their specialism or their combat role. Yeah, you know, just to pick them out from the other 5 models that are all going to be the same. So very interesting here. For the Dire Avenger, they've noted at the top here, compare that to 4 Dire Avengers. So 1 fire team for the Eldari is 4 Dire Avengers. So presumably when it comes to Eldari, you'll be able to take either, you know, 4 Dire Avengers in 1 fire team, or I would assume if there's only 4, you can 100% take a second fire team. So it'll be like 6 Guardian Defenders. Pretty cool stuff. Anyway, let's look at their stats. So we've got movement 3 circle. Okay. APL 2. That's the standard. GA 1. Yep, that makes sense for such an elite model. Elite model. Calling Dire Avengers elite models is weird, but now defense is 3. So this is obviously going to be the big thing. A Poxwalker is defense 3. A Dire Avenger is defense 3. Anyway, save is 4 up, 8 wounds. So they are a little bit better than Guardsmen there, than the Krieg Guardsmen. But it's interesting to note. So same defense, but the save of 4 up, whereas the Guardsmen have 5 up, and the Guardsmen have 7 wounds, whereas the Dire Avengers have 8 wounds. So first things first, when it comes to the 8 wounds, that's cool. Like because that's something you wouldn't really be able to denote in current Kill Team or 40k. The fact that there is one extra, that there is 1/7 of a wound more on a Dire Avenger than there is on a Guardsman. Now I don't really know what that means. Like statistically, I don't really know how much that 1 bump in wounds means just yet. We'd have to look at how much damage the standard gun does. We then go over to what they can shoot us with, which is an Avenger Shuriken Catapult. Now it's attack 4, which is the same as a lasgun. They're hitting on 3s, damage 3/4. Now, just off the top of my head, I believe that's the same as the lasgun, except they're hitting us on 3s instead of 4s. Special rule is balance. We still don't know what balance does. No clue at all. And then on a crit, it's rending. We also don't know what rending means. Yeah, I mean, perhaps rending does mean that there are going to be effects that affect the dice roll, like the die face that you need to roll. Maybe this does actually have a form of armor penetration on a crit, which will be very interesting. Again, don't really know how important that is and what effect that actually going to have. We then come to abilities, which again, very telling. Defense tactics. Oh, sorry. The fists. Just with regular Dire Avenger fists, they are better than a bayonet because they're hitting on 3s instead of 4s. But otherwise, they're the same. So 3 attacks, 2/3 damage, but they're hitting on 3s. Anyway, so abilities. Defense tactics. Each time this operative performs an Overwatch action, for that action's shooting attack, do not worsen the ballistic skill characteristic of its ranged weapons as a result of performing an Overwatch action. So again, this kind of just riffing off the idea that rending is possibly changing the die face that's needed to roll. Perhaps Overwatch is doing the same. Firstly, this tells us there is an Overwatch action. We kind of knew that, but I think we still don't actually know what an Overwatch action could be. Perhaps the dice face you need to roll is changed. Maybe it will be 6-ups. And that's actually not too crazy. Overwatch in current Kill Team 40k is highly unreliable, you need 6s. But in this, everyone's rolling like 4 dice. So needing a 6, that's not too crazy. But then they'll still be rolling their like 3 defense dice. Yeah, Overwatch still wouldn't be that effective. Maybe it's just like -1 to your shooting. Maybe it's to your ballistic skill, sorry. Maybe you just lose a dice. Who knows? But anyway, it proves that Overwatch is a thing, and it will in some way be worse than regular shooting. If not obvious, we already know this, but do note that the Craft World Dire Avenger guy does have Craft World as a selectable keyword. We already knew that from Krieg, so it's fine. If you haven't watched my other videos, you now know there will be sub-factions of some sort at some point in the game. And then that takes us to the Custodian Guard, which is super interesting. So, movement is 3 circle, okay? That's the standard, it seems. Much like 6 inches is the standard. This is still 6 inches, it's just 3 circle. APL's 4, we already knew this was going to be APL 4. GA's 1. Again, any sort of elite model, they're all GA 1. Now the defense is still 3. That's odd. We're going to come back to that in a moment. The save is 2-up and it's got 18 wounds. Now I think it's pretty safe to say that 18 wounds in this case is basically going to be the most wounds we see on the table. I mean, if you think over to 40k, Kill Team specifically, obviously, not many things have more than 3 wounds. I assume that therefore 18 wounds is basically the upper limit of anything we're going to see. That's really interesting. Knowing that we never really have to do more than 18 wounds means that we can start thinking about, okay, even against the toughest teams, how much damage do I need to be able to put out in a round to remove even the toughest from the board? 2-up save is of course really good, but we kind of knew that. I mean, they're Custodian Guard, right? But defense 3. So this is super interesting. I'm actually really shocked that the Custodian Guard has the same defense as a Guardsman, as a Poxwalker, as a Dire Avenger. Before, I wanted to say that perhaps, you know, the range on defense rolls would be like quite split and wide. You know, if it was just the Poxwalker and the Custodian Guard, I'd be like, well, maybe, you know, the faster races like the Dire Avenger or the Harlequins would have lower saves but higher defense rolls, right, to kind of imitate their speed and grace and all that jazz. But no, just on the surface, that feels like a negative to me. I was quite invested in the idea, in the notion that defense was going to be quite a variable stat, almost more so than the save. Pretty cool. I mean, unless you're rolling double ones on the regular with the Custodian Guard, you're not taking any damage, and 18 wounds, you're going to be an absolute not fun person to kill. Let's keep it family friendly. Okay, let's look at some of his weapons. We've got the Guardian Spear, 4 attacks. Oh, so his ballistic skill weapon skills always 2-up. There you go, that's easy. Both of his shots are 4 attacks. Both of his close combats are 5 attacks. And then the Guardian Spear, we've got 3-5. The Sentinel Blade, we've got 3-4. And then, as we've seen before, the melee always seems to be doing a lot more damage. So the Guardian Spear is 5-7, whereas the Sentinel Blade is 4-6. He's lethal 5-up on all of them. The Sentinel Blade, though, is essentially a pistol, kind of, with the range of 1 pentagon. Pentagon? Yeah. And then in the exclamation mark, we see he on a crit, he does P1. And I don't think we have any idea what that means at all. In fact, let's read the abilities. The Emperor's Chosen. Other than the effects of battle scars, this operative cannot be injured. You can ignore any or all modifiers to this operative's APL, and it is not affected by the stun critical rule. Okay. Battle scars, I'm going to say a narrative. I think that's pretty obvious. The Emperor's Chosen is essentially just like transhuman physiology. It means that in Kill Team, when you get a flesh wound, any Marine would ignore that flesh wound. I assume that all Marines are going to now have the Emperor's Chosen, essentially. They might give it different rules. We also see that a stun is something that can happen. We don't know what a stun will do, but it's a thing. Custodians are going to ignore a stun, but depending on what a stun does, I mean, we could get into some sort of like stun lock meta. I can very much see people deliberately building teams based around all of my weapons are stuns or will stun you kind of thing. Although arguably the designers probably have deliberately built things so that you can't build things that way, as we've already seen in the last article with the list building. But I suspect that stuns are going to be very effective. And then we have a Storm Shield. If this operative is equipped with a Storm Shield, it has a 4-up invulnerable save. Each time it fights in combat, in the resolve successful hit step of that combat, each time it parries, 2 of your opponent's successful hits are discarded instead of 1. This is kind of like the 4-up invuln means that you're getting a defensive crit on a 4+. So you're not critting on a 4+, because if you're critting on a 4+, that means that your attack is hitting on a 4+ as well. The invuln save means that on the 4-up, your defenses are criticals, but not your attacks, which makes sense. I'm okay with that. That seems like something that's easy enough to follow. Gosh, so really, at this point, I should be whipping out the calculator to figure out just how difficult this Custodian is to kill, and just how like lethal it's going to be against, for example, a guardsman. This is something that like both in melee combat, it needs to get 2 successes through. That's it. And you've got 5 attacks. I'm just going to say off the bat, you should be killing a guardsman a turn with your attacks. Like, that's easy enough to say, because you don't need to get a critical. Oh, sorry. First off, the Guardian Spear, if you roll a 6, the opponent just dies. That seems pretty, yeah, okay, because it's dealing 7 on the crit. But even on a 5, even on a regular hit, on a 2+, you just need 2 2+s on 5 dice to get the kill. Unless your opponent rolls really hot, like 3 6s on those, on its defense, which it's not going to. So yeah, I think it's very safe to say that doing any sort of melee is going to be absolutely punishing. And let's be honest, who's going to charge a Custodian Guard? Who looks at a 2-up save and thinks, yeah, I'll take that, no problem. And it's a 2-up, 4-up invuln, right? So it's not just a 2-up, but I have some gun that has really high rend, and so it, you know, like a melter, maybe. So, oh gosh, yeah. Obviously, we don't know the game yet. We don't know how difficult this is going to be to kill. I mean, it's a Custodian Guard, right? I suspect this is going to be the most difficult model to kill in the game. At least for quite a long time, until we get some weird stuff. 2-up save on 3 defense dice, which is, again, strange for me, but whatever, with 18 wounds. Anyway, that's all that we get told here. So, you know, the big thing is that the Kill Team Compendium is definitely coming alongside the core box. We're good. No worries there. We also know that it seems like everything is going to have defense 3. I'm not saying 100%, but I'm saying if even a Custodian Guard has it and a Poxwalker has it, I'm trying to think, when would they not have defense 3 at that point? Also, it seems like 18 wounds is going to be the cap. I can't see anything having higher than 18 wounds. Well, I'm pretty hyped. Definitely look forward to seeing... There's a spider on my desk. It's a small one, it's cute, it's fine. I'm really looking forward to seeing more data cards. I find seeing the data cards for some reason super interesting. I don't know why, because it's not like I'm smart enough to immediately say, well, now that I've seen defense 3 on all of these, that means blah blah blah. I need longer to think about these things. I think that this article has arguably told us more than anything before. Now, obviously that's because a lot of the stuff we'd already seen had been like really basic concepts, and we'd actually already managed to kind of squint our way through the majority of that rulebook somehow, magically. Yesterday's thing and today's thing tell us a lot more information that we didn't have any idea about. So yeah, really cool. I hope that you've enjoyed this. I hope that I haven't dragged on too long. It is getting to 25 minutes, my bad. I mean, at least I didn't waste time reading the article. It was just there was a lot to say about the data cards themselves. Guys, what do you think about the data cards? If you could let me know, it'd be interesting. How do you feel about everyone having defense 3? I'm genuinely not sure how I feel about that yet. I'll be having a think. If you made it to the end of the video, thank you very much, and I would like to give you a big triple hello very wholesome, and I give that wholesomeness to you. Anyway, this has been Glass Half Dead. I hope you've had a good day and continue to have a good day. Goodbye.